The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights accused Guatemalan Prosecutor's Office of attempting to undermine democracy. In Palestine, the death toll from Israel's genocidal aggression against Gaza rose to 17,997, mostly women and children. West African leaders ruled that to maintain sanctions on Niger's ruling military junta and demanded progress toward a brief transition to civilian rule. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, accuses Guatemala Prosecutor's Office of undermining democracy. On Monday, Volker Turk claimed that the Public Ministry of Guatemala is persistently and systematically trying to undermine the general elections results, disregarding the voters' will. A day after the prosecutor's office declared the elections won by President-elect Bernardo Arévalo de León as invalid, Turk assured that judicial and political actions have long been violating the rule of law and democracy. In September, Arévalo warned that Attorney General Consuelo Porras was attempting a coup d'etat against him to prevent him from taking office on January 14th, replacing Jean Mattei. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the Cooperative Republic of Guyana will hold a high-level meeting with the purpose of preserving peace in Latin America and the Caribbean. The meeting will be held on Thursday, December 14th in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. President Nicolás Maduro received a proposal for dialogue from the head of state of Brazil, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Rafael Gonçalves, during a telephone conversation. In both calls, President Maduro ratified the historical position of Venezuela's unquestionable sovereign rights over Guayana Esequiba, as well as the legitimate and peaceful nature of this territorial claim, which has been maintained in strict compliance with the provisions of the 1966 Geneva Agreement. Regarding the dialogue to be held between the two nations, the national government expressed its satisfaction and accepts this call with pleasure and commitment. Prime Minister Rafael Gonçalves announced a face-to-face meeting between Guyanese President Irfan Ali and Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro next December 14th in the Caribbean islands.
Regarding an important initiative for face-to-face dialogue between the presidents of Guyana and Venezuela. That meeting, that dialogue, face-to-face, is scheduled to take place on Thursday, the 14th, here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This discussion would relate to matters consequential upon the border controversy which exists between Guyana and Venezuela.
In Venezuela, Foreign Minister Ivan Hill and Communications Minister Freddy Ñañez met with the international media in a briefing at the Casa Amarilla. The Foreign Minister explained that Venezuela goes under the premise of peace and will not accept the interference of third parties. Hill added that Venezuela and Guyana have been able to cooperate under prior administrations despite the ongoing territorial dispute, but stressed Guyana unilaterally withdrew from dialogue and negotiations. For Venezuela, the meeting itself constitutes a diplomatic achievement, as Guyana admits there is still a territorial controversy that remains unresolved and that there must be an equitable solution that satisfies both nations. A first objective of the meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on Thursday is to diffuse the conflict until both parties find a suitable solution. Both presidents will bring their agendas to the negotiation tables. 9 people were killed at an MST camp in northern Brazil when workers installing an internet antenna accidentally touched a high-voltage power line, electrocuting 3 employees and 6 residents. The accident, which also left 8 people injured with burns that were taken to the hospital, occurred on Saturday and generated a short circuit which also produced a large fire in the village camp of the landless workers movement, installed in the outskirts of the city of Parauapebas. A succession of modest hamlets went up in flames, according to officials of the Para Fire Department. According to the landless workers movement, employees of the internet company without the minimum safety standards were installing an internet antenna individually requested by the residents. After the electrical discharge, the fire department was called and the fire was brought under control. Javier Milei took office in Argentina and warned citizens that it would be necessary to make a tough fiscal adjustment that will imply sacrifices but will eventually bear fruit. The president of Argentina addressed a message to his followers in which he made it clear that his plan of economic shock and tough fiscal adjustment is the bet for his first month in office. Milei launched a string of data on the country's fiscal deficit to justify the upcoming implementation of his plan of measures. He considered that the solution implies a fiscal adjustment in the national public sector of 5 points of GDP, which, as he promised, will fall almost entirely on the state and not on the private sector. The application of a program of forceful cuts will have a negative impact on salaries, poverty levels, and indigency. Among the guests invited to the ceremony were the King of Spain, the presidents of Armenia, Paraguay, Chile, Ukraine, the Israeli Foreign Minister, and the U.S. Secretary of Energy. On Sunday, former U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he will not testify in his civil trial for fraud in the Trump Organization in New York. Trump was previously called to testify on November 6 by lawyers for New York Attorney General Letitia James, whose office has accused him, 2 of his sons, and their company of a decade-long fraud scheme designed to benefit themselves by hundreds of millions by getting unusually good terms on loans and insurance. Trump was called to testify for the defense on Monday. The businessman communicated through his social media the decision and explained that the trial could disqualify him and his family from doing business in the future. During the press, Trump has questioned the judge, Arthur Engoron, and the New York Attorney General Letitia James, ignoring the order that prevents him from making written comments about court employees. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. The death toll from the Israeli attacks against the Gazan population has risen to 17,997, the majority of whom, as has been the case since the beginning of the genocidal operation, are women and children. In a press conference, the spokesman of the Gaza Health Ministry, Ashraf Al-Qudra, updated on Monday the criminal statistics of the 66 days of the genocidal operation of the Israeli occupier. Among the victims of the last 12 hours include 2 women killed in Kamal Adwan Hospital and more than 40 civilians from Shelley in Nuseirat, Deir al-Balad, and Sheikh Radwan. The spokesman for the Gazati Ministry also confirmed that the number of wounded stands at 49,229. In Gaza, Israeli forces have once again urged the population to evacuate to central region, supposedly a safe zone for civilians. However, strikes continue to target Deir al-Balah region, which is supposed to receive those displaced. Let's listen to our correspondent in Gaza, Noor Harasin, who reports from the Al-Shuhada Al-Aqsa Hospital.
Only this morning, the IDF published a map of Gaza, asking people who are inside northern Gaza to evacuate to the city of Deir el-Balah, which is located in middle Gaza. They even asked the people who are in southern Gaza, places like Khan Yunis and Rafah, to evacuate to middle Gaza to city of Deir el-Balah. Right now I am inside the Shuhada al-Aqsa hospital, which is located in Deir el-Balah. A series of Israeli airstrikes that targeted this place and also the surrounding refugee camps. We're talking about tens of people that were killed, hundreds of people that were injured. We will let you inside the hospital. There is actually no place even for us to go inside the emergency room and film. There's no place for the doctors to see and help and treat those who were injured, mostly, as usual, women and children. This is the reality of what is happening here on the ground in Gaza, even though the Israeli army continue asking people to evacuate. But now we are seeing more people staying where they are because they are seeing that even the safe places are being targeted by the Israeli army. Nur Harazin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safari on Monday denounced Israel's plan to expel the Palestinians from Gaza through a genocidal war and reaffirmed that his government would not allow this to happen. Safari's statements came as part of an intervention by the Jordanian delegation at the Doha Forum organized by the Qatari government. Jordan's foreign minister added that Israel has created a scale of hatred that will haunt entire generations in the region. Jordan shares borders with the West Bank and in 1948 absorbed the bulk of the expelled Palestinians after the creation of Israel, ratifying that his country cannot remain indifferent to the illegal process of expulsion of the occupier. He assured that there is a worldwide demand to put an end to Israel's genocidal war in Gaza.
Victims are increasing by the day.
What we are seeing in Gaza is not simple the killing of innocent people and the destruction of their neighborhood. We are seeing a systematic effort by Israel to empty Gaza of its people. We are seeing great destruction in the north, and some of the things that are taking place there look like the determination of an Israeli policy to push Palestinians out of Gaza.
On Monday in Palestine, universities, public transport, banks, stores and factories in the West Bank went on strike in solidarity with Gaza. The strike called by the National and Islamic forces in the West Bank paralyzed all aspects of life in a popular call to continue the confrontation with the Israeli occupation in all regions, streets and squares. The stoppage of labor and social activities denounces the position of Washington of rejecting the United Nations Security Council's resolution on a ceasefire. Among the actions that the inhabitants of the West Bank are carrying out as part of the strike are not leaving home, not shopping in person or on the internet, and deactivating Facebook and Instagram accounts. Also on Monday, Palestinians participated in a rally in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank in solidarity with Gaza. In this sense, protesters at the rally display a huge list with the names of the victims in Gaza Strip. Activists joined the strike in solidarity with the besieged territory that covered businesses, public workers and education. In the meantime, Essam Abu Baker, coordinator of Palestinian factions in Ramallah, described the protest as a global effort to pressure Israel to stop the war and reported that strikes were also taking place in parts of Jordan and Lebanon. In Spain, activists in solidarity with Palestine mobilized to the Israeli consulate in Barcelona to demand a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. In view of the continuity of the Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip, the pro-Palestinian activism of Barcelona organized a new mobilization to ask for a ceasefire. Demonstrators expressed their rejection to the occupying force of the Zionist regime of Israel and denounced that what is happening in the Middle East country is a genocide. They also raised Palestinian flags and slogans expressing Gaza, you are not alone, and boycott Israel.
I'm here together with my comrades because for more than 75 years there has been a people, the Palestinian people, who are suffering a whole series of massacres, injustice and eviction from their lands. And at this moment there is a government in Israel which is a Zionist government. I am for that, for justice between peoples, for the wars to stop. And because Netanyahu, the fascist and murderer, didn't learn from the Jewish Holocaust, he learned it to apply it to Palestine. That's why I am here, to protest.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join us directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. West African leaders on Sunday maintained sanctions on Niger's ruling military junta and demanded progress towards a brief transition to civilian rule before easing the measures. Leaders of the Economic Community of West African States met at a summit in Nigeria's capital Abuja to assess the region in the aftermath of coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Niger since 2020. Ecowas Commission Chairman Omar Touré said a group of heads of state from Benin, Togo, and Sierra Leone would engage with military junta leaders in Niger to decide on progress toward transition and other conditions for the lifting of sanctions. 2 people have been killed and 7 others injured in an attack on a convoy of the International Red Cross Committee in Khartoum, capital of Sudan. The aggression occurred amid clashes between the Sudanese army and the Parliamentary Rapid Support Forces. The international organization indicated that the injured have been rushed to the hospital. The convoy was made up of 3 vehicles of the International Red Cross Committee and 3 buses with the badge. The Red Cross Committee said to have been in the area as it had been evacuated over 100 civilians in a requested and coordinated operation with both sides of the conflict. Civil society groups in Uganda will meet constitutional court judges this week as they attempt to overturn the world's harshest anti-LGBTQ+ law. The law, which received overwhelming support from members of the parliament when it was passed in March, imposes the death sentence and life imprisonment for certain homosexual acts. Activists will appear at the court on Monday to finalize their appeal before the date is set for a full hearing later this month. Since the law was passed, violence and discrimination has intensified against LGBTQ+ groups, according to a recent report by the Convening for Equality Coalition. Between January 1st and August 31st, the CFE documented 306 rights violations based on the victim's sexual orientation and gender identity committed by state and non-state actors, all of which have gone unaddressed by authorities. Zimbabwe's ruling party won the by-election held this weekend. The opposition Citizens Coalition for Change lost several of its legislators in circumstances that have not been clarified by the organization. Such departure led to the calling of those elections in which the ruling ZANU-PF party won 7 seats out of 9 that were disputed over the weekend. It now holds 144 of the 210 electoral districts. Zimbabwe will have a runoff election on February 3, 2024 to choose the remaining legislators. An environmental activist stormed a COP28 event on Monday and called for an end to fossil fuels, while the presidency is proposing a new draft climate agreement that calls for reducing fossil fuel production and consumption but no longer mentions a phase-out. The new draft climate agreement proposed on Monday by the COP28 presidency, while calling for a reduction in the production of consumption of fossil fuel, is being rejected by environmental organizations that claim the new policy does not value phasing out. The text drafted by the COP28 president was made public on the eve of the last day of the annual climate conference being held in Dubai, and although it advocates reducing fossil fuel consumption and production in a fair, orderly, and equitable way to achieve the goal of zero net emissions by 2050, it is rejected by environmental organizations. On Monday, Ukraine sounded the alarm over its European ambitions as EU leaders face a struggle to agree renewed financial support and an invitation to Kiev to start formal membership talks. On Thursday, leaders of the 27 European Union states met at a summit that could decide the fate of a promised 50 billion euros in aid, additional funds for weapons shipments, and opening Ukraine's path to join the bloc. Agreement on the key issues must be unanimous, and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban has threatened to block any new support for Ukraine. With the United States backing for Ukraine under threat from Republicans in Congress, the prospect that support from the country's other main ally may also further terrify its government. A U.S. Army F-16 fighter jet crashed Monday morning in Gunsan, southwest South Korea. The accident happened near Gunsan Air Base during a training session in which the pilot was able to escape safely after ejecting from the cockpit. Authorities confirmed that the site is used by the South Korean and U.S. armies in their training maneuvers. Washington and Seoul have stepped up training maneuvers in response to defense moves made by North Korea in reaction to constant threats from the United States and its regional allies. The Chinese government on Monday urged the Philippines to stop infringing on its sovereignty and to stop provocative maneuvers at sea. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said in response to a question about the Philippines' illegal actions in Yao on Sunday. In this sense, Ning added that on Sunday a freighter, an official vessel, and two Philippine Coast Guard cutters, without permission from the Chinese government, entered waters adjacent to Yao in China's Nansha Kundao region in an attempt to ship construction materials to the warship illegally beached on the reef, ignoring warnings from Chinese Coast Guard vessels. Mao Ning noted that Chinese authorities took the necessary coercive measures against the Philippine vessel in accordance with national and international law, which were professional, restrained, justified, and legitimate. We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an authoritative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.